The room fell silent the moment they stepped inside. Conversations froze. Glasses hovered midair. Every eye locked onto the young woman who had once been invisible to the world. Nobody could understand why a wealthy man would walk into a grand wedding with someone they believed did not belong there. But the truth behind that moment began a few weeks earlier, when a single decision turned two shattered lives toward a future neither expected. This is where it begins. Daniel Reed stood at the edge of his apartment balcony, gripping an invitation that felt heavier than any document he had ever held. The card shimmered beneath the morning light, but he could barely look at it without feeling something twist painfully in his chest. His ex-fiancée, Harper Lane, was getting married in Florence. A lavish ceremony, exclusive guests, endless luxury, all the things she used to dream about when they were still together. But she was sharing that dream with someone else now. Daniel stepped inside his spacious living room, the modern white walls and silent air doing nothing to calm the storm inside him. He dropped the invitation on the table and sank into the nearest chair. He had not spoken to Harper since the day she walked out, tired of feeling like second place to his work. She always said she wanted a life with him, not just a schedule around him. And now she was inviting him to watch her marry a man who had given her exactly what Daniel never did: time. He thought about ignoring the invitation altogether. It would be simple, easy, but the more he tried to convince himself, the louder a stubborn voice inside him whispered, "Go. Show her you survived. Show her she no longer controls your world." But the thought of appearing alone made something inside him sink. He didn't want to walk into that room as the man everyone remembered, the one Harper left behind. He needed a way to break the story before it even began. He needed someone by his side. That thought stayed with him long after the sun dipped behind the skyline. The next afternoon, Daniel left his apartment and wandered aimlessly through the city. He didn't know what he was looking for. Maybe clarity, maybe courage, maybe a reason to believe he still had something worth offering someone. His mind was so crowded he barely noticed where he was walking until a soft voice drifted from a nearby sidewalk. He turned his head and saw a woman sitting beneath the shade of a small bakery awning. Her clothes were faded, her hair pulled back in a way that suggested she had done it without a mirror. A worn canvas bag sat beside her feet. People passed by without glancing her way. And yet Daniel stopped. There was something about her presence, a quiet steadiness, as if the world had pushed her down countless times, but she had not let go of who she was. Her eyes lifted, meeting his with a calmness that caught him off guard. "Are you all right?" he asked, though he wasn't even sure why. She gave a small nod. "I'm fine, just resting." Her name, she said, was Maya. The name suited her. Simple, strong, honest. Daniel sat down near her, unsure what he intended or why his heart felt lighter for the first time in days. They spoke about small things first: the weather, the crowd, the scent of bread drifting from the bakery behind them. Maya didn't explain her past, but her voice carried the weight of someone who had endured far more than she ever said aloud. He asked her what brought her here. She answered with quiet acceptance, saying life had taken strange turns, and she ended up where she never expected to be. There was no bitterness in her tone, only a tired strength that made Daniel wonder how someone could lose so much and still carry so much grace. A pull formed in his chest, something he couldn't name, and then an idea hit him so suddenly that he almost laughed from shock. It sounded foolish, ridiculous, impossible, but the thought refused to leave. "Maya," Daniel said, trying to steady his voice, "this might sound strange, very strange, but I want to ask you something." She looked uncertain, curious but cautious. "What is it?" Daniel took a breath that felt heavier than truth. "Would you come to a wedding with me?" Maya blinked. "A wedding? Yes. My ex-fiancée is getting married. I don't want to show up alone." There was confusion on her face, then hesitation, then a flicker of disbelief. She asked him if he was joking. He said no. He meant it. And for a long moment, she studied him, searching for any hint of mockery or cruelty. When she finally answered, her voice held a quiet strength. "If this is real and you're sincere, I'll go." A small spark of something warm settled inside Daniel. "I am." And so the strange agreement was made. The next day, he took her to a boutique. Not a small one, but one of those places where the staff check your outfit before checking their own manners. The moment they saw Maya's worn clothes, judgment settled across their faces like dust. Daniel saw it. Maya saw it. But Maya did not shrink. She walked into the boutique with her back straight, as if she belonged in every room that doubted her. Daniel felt something inside him shift as he watched her. Respect, admiration, maybe even something deeper. She tried on dress after dress, each more beautiful than the last. But when she stepped out in a deep sapphire gown, the room seemed to still for a moment. The color brought out the warmth in her skin, the brightness in her eyes. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection like she wasn't sure if she was seeing herself or a stranger she had lost long ago. Daniel found himself unable to look away. "You look incredible," he said quietly. Maya touched the fabric as though afraid it might vanish. "I don't know if this is me." "It is," Daniel said. "It always was." Her lips curved into a small, fragile smile. The day of the wedding came quickly, and as Daniel drove toward the venue with Maya beside him, something inside him felt different. Lighter, but also uncertain. He knew the world he was walking into. A world full of whispers and judgment. A world that had never been kind to people like Maya. But she sat calmly beside him, hands folded in her lap, eyes steady. "Are you nervous?" Daniel asked. "Not for myself," she answered. "I'm more worried about what you'll feel when you see her again." Her kindness hit him harder than he expected. The venue was a historic villa outside Florence. Wide stone steps, endless gardens, candlelit halls. Everything Harper once said she wanted. And when Daniel and Maya walked through the grand entrance, every conversation halted. People stared. Hard. But Maya did not break. She walked with quiet confidence, her head high, her shoulders firm. And Daniel realized he had never met anyone as strong as her. At the far end of the hall, Harper turned toward them. The shock on her face was instant. Sharp. Cold. But beneath it was something else. Something Harper wasn't expecting to feel. Regret. The moment their eyes met, Daniel knew the wedding would not go the way Harper had planned. And nothing that followed would be simple. End of part 1. Part 2 continues the story exactly from this moment. Daniel could feel the weight of Harper's stare long before she reached them. Her steps were measured, almost rehearsed, the way someone walks when they need the room to believe they're in control. But her eyes told a different story. The moment they landed on Maya, a hint of disbelief flickered across her calm exterior before she forced a practiced smile back into place. "Daniel," Harper said, her voice sweetened in the way people use when others are watching. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." "I told you I would," he replied, steady and unreadable. Harper nodded slowly, then turned to Maya with a polite smile that did not touch her eyes. "And you are?" "Maya," Daniel answered before Maya could speak. "She's with me." For a brief second, Harper's mask cracked. Something sharp flashed behind her expression, but she recovered quickly and extended a hand. "Well, Maya, I hope you enjoy the evening." Maya shook her hand with an ease that surprised even Daniel. "Thank you. It's a beautiful event." Harper's lips tightened at the compliment, though she had worked tirelessly to make every inch of this night perfect. And now, against every expectation, the person standing beside Daniel, someone Harper assumed he would never choose, had walked in with quiet grace that unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Guests were still whispering. Their eyes moved between Daniel and Maya, like they were trying to solve a puzzle they had never seen before. Daniel felt their judgment, but Maya didn't flinch. She moved through the room with a calmness that made the whispers fade into the background. Daniel realized he was drawing strength from her presence. As the evening went on, Daniel found himself laughing at Maya's gentle humor, something simple and honest that felt refreshing among the polished laughter of the crowd. He had missed genuine conversations. With Harper, everything used to feel like a debate about who should be more successful or who had sacrificed more. With Maya, nothing felt forced. Nothing felt like a performance. They found a quiet space near the edge of the courtyard where soft music drifted through the open doors. Maya looked up toward the night sky. "It's peaceful here," she said. "Different from the rest of the place." Daniel followed her gaze. You make it feel peaceful." Her eyes shifted toward him, soft and searching. Before either of them could speak again, they heard a familiar voice behind them. "Daniel, can we talk?" He turned to find Harper standing alone. Her fiancé was nowhere in sight. Her expression was tight, controlled, but her eyes carried a complicated mix of anger and something like uncertainty. Daniel glanced at Maya. She nodded gently. "Go ahead." He followed Harper to a corner beside a fountain surrounded by climbing vines. She crossed her arms, her voice sharp but quiet. "Why did you bring her here?" Daniel kept his voice steady. "Because she matters." Harper scoffed. "Daniel, look around. These people will talk for months. They already are. You know how this world is. Why involve someone who isn't from it?" He felt irritation rising. "Because she's not the one pretending." Harper froze, then exhaled slowly. "You think I'm pretending?" Daniel looked her directly in the eye. "I think you care too much about how things look, and I think that's why we didn't work." Harper's jaw tightened. "You could have come alone. Instead, you brought someone who doesn't fit here." Before Daniel could respond, Maya's voice came from behind them, gentle but firm. "Maybe the problem isn't that I don't fit here. Maybe the problem is that this world is too small for people who think differently." Harper stiffened, turned toward her, and opened her mouth as if ready to strike back, but something stopped her. Maya didn't look angry. She didn't look intimidated. She simply stood her ground with quiet strength. Daniel saw it too. Harper was used to competing with people who played her game, but Maya didn't play it, and that unsettled Harper in ways she couldn't hide. "I didn't mean to interrupt," Maya said, "but I won't pretend I didn't hear what you said. I know where I come from, and I know what people assume when they look at me. But Daniel invited me because he wanted someone real next to him, not someone who fits a picture." Harper's expression shifted. She blinked, unsure of how to respond. The tension hung between them, sharp and uncomfortable, until Harper simply nodded and turned away, saying she had guessed the greet. Daniel watched her leave before turning back to Maya. You didn't have to do that." Maya shook her head. "Yes, I did. Not because of her. Because of you." Daniel felt something stir inside him, something warm and unfamiliar. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words refused to come. Instead, he took her hand gently, grateful in a way he didn't know how to explain. They walked back inside together, leaving the conversation behind, but carrying something different into the room. Something unseen, but unmistakably strong. For the first time that evening, Daniel realized he wasn't pretending either. As the music began to shift, guests paired off for the first slow dance of the night. Daniel looked at Maya. She hesitated for a brief moment, then nodded. They stepped onto the dance floor, the world around them softening as they moved together. Maya's hand in his felt grounding real. Daniel didn't feel the pressure of the room or the judgment in the air. He felt only the steady rhythm between them. He realized then that something in him had changed. He wasn't thinking about Harper anymore. He was thinking about Maya. And that thought alone was enough to shift the course of the night entirely. The dance ended, but neither of them stepped apart. Instead, they remained close, sharing a quiet moment that neither wanted to break. Yet beyond the soft music and warm lights, the weight of the world still waited. And before the night was over, it would begin pushing back. The music faded into the echoes of laughter and shifting footsteps, but Daniel and Maya stayed close for a moment longer. When they finally stepped back, Maya gave him a small smile before glancing toward the outer hall, where people had begun drifting toward the dessert tables. Daniel could tell she was taking everything in, quietly collecting details the way someone who had lived on the edges of society learns to observe before they speak. But even with her calm expression, he could sense the tension beneath it. Not fear, not insecurity, something heavier. A quiet awareness of how sharply this world judged people like her. Before he could say anything, a man in a tailored suit approached with a glass of champagne in hand. His smile was polite, but his eyes said everything he didn't voice. "Daniel," the man said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Good to see you. It's been a while." Daniel forced a small nod. "Yeah, good to see you too. And you must be," the man asked, turning to Maya with a smile that was too polished to be sincere. "Maya," she said, offering a respectful nod. The man raised a brow. "Lovely. I don't think we've met before. Daniel answered before Maya had to. We came together. The man's smile tightened, though he pretended not to be surprised. Interesting pairing. Harper certainly wasn't expecting this. Daniel felt Maya shift slightly beside him, not retreating, just grounding herself. The man excused himself a moment later, taking his curiosity with him. But Daniel could see how the encounter had settled on Maya's shoulders like a familiar weight. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I'm used to people looking at me like that, Maya said. I just didn't expect it to bother me tonight. Daniel wanted to say something comforting, something that would erase the sting of the moment. But before he could, Maya's expression shifted towards something softer. But it's all right, she said. I'm not here for them. Her words settled in Daniel's chest, quiet and warm. Hours passed, blending laughter, soft music, and polite conversations into a smooth haze. Daniel found himself drawn to Maya more with each passing moment. Every time she spoke, there was depth behind her words. Every time she smiled, the room felt less heavy. But whispers continued. Stares lingered too long, and the unspoken judgments in the air sharpened like glass edges. Later in the evening, Daniel excused himself to get drinks, and when he returned, he found Maya standing outside on the terrace alone. The glow of lanterns cast soft shadows across her face. She was calm, but he knew the peace was forced. You disappeared, he said gently as he approached. She looked at him with a faint, quiet smile. I just needed a moment to breathe. Daniel stepped beside her, taking in the view of the dark hills rolling beyond the villa. I'm sorry, he said, for all of this, for how people are acting. Maya shook her head. Don't apologize. You didn't create this world. You just grew up in it. He hesitated. Still, they shouldn't treat you that way. They're not treating me any worse than life already has, she answered softly. But tonight is different. I'm trying to let myself stand here without shrinking. Daniel admired her resilience, but he also felt something else. A tightening of guilt, an ache he hadn't confronted yet. There was a part of him, one he didn't like, wondering if bringing Maya here was selfish. Was he trying to prove something to Harper? To himself? To this entire world? Maya seemed to sense the shift in him. What are you thinking about? Before he could answer, someone called his name. Harper's fiancé, Oliver, approached with a friendly expression that didn't match the tension Daniel felt beneath it. Daniel, Oliver greeted. Glad you made it. Harper told me you were here. Oliver then looked at Maya with a polite nod. And you must be Daniel's guest. Maya, right? She nodded gently. Oliver continued. It's wonderful you're here. Not many people have the courage to walk into a room full of strangers like this. The sentence carried a subtle curve, one Maya felt immediately. Daniel saw the flicker in her eyes, but she kept her voice calm. Thank you, she said. I don't mind strangers. They become less intimidating when you remember they're just people. Oliver smiled awkwardly and excused himself after a few pleasantries. When he left, Daniel felt frustration bubble under his calm exterior. He didn't mean anything by it, Maya said. He didn't have to mean it. It still came out wrong. People like him always think they're being kind, Maya said, her voice gentle. But kindness without understanding is just another form of judgment. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, seeing the wisdom in her expression. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shrinking. She was simply acknowledging what she had learned to survive. They walked back indoors together, and as the night stretched on, Daniel found himself falling deeper into something he couldn't name. It wasn't pity. It wasn't gratitude. It was something far more honest. But as he moved through the room, he felt the atmosphere shifting. People looked at him differently, like they were reassessing him, like his choice to bring Maya meant he was stepping outside the rules that held this world together. He didn't care. Not tonight. But the discomfort wasn't his to bear alone. Maya felt every glance like another test she hadn't agreed to take. And as the evening neared its final hour, Daniel stepped away briefly to speak to an old colleague. When he returned, he saw Maya standing again in a quiet corner. But she wasn't alone. Harper stood in front of her, her arms crossed, her voice low, her eyes sharp. Maya's expression was calm, but Daniel could sense tension in the air, thick and unmistakable. Harper was saying something he couldn't hear from across the room, something that made Maya's posture stiffen, though her face remained composed. Daniel stepped closer, and Harper's words became clear. "You don't understand who he is," she said, "or the kind of people he deals with. You don't belong in his world, Maya, and dragging him down with you is cruel." Maya didn't move. She didn't blink. She simply looked at Harper with an expression that wasn't anger, but something stronger. "I'm not dragging anyone," she said quietly. "And Daniel isn't a prize you lost. He's a person who makes his own choices." Harper opened her mouth, ready to fire back. Daniel stepped forward before she could. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice steady but cold. Harper startled slightly, then straightened. "I'm protecting you. Someone needs to. You're being reckless." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, you're being cruel because you didn't expect to feel threatened tonight." Harper's face hardened. "Threatened? By her?" "Yes," Daniel said, "because she didn't come here pretending." Harper stepped back as if she had been struck. Maya looked between them, her eyes steady, but inside her chest something heavy began to stir. A realization she didn't want to face. A fear she had been pushing down since she walked into the room. Daniel was caught between two worlds, and Maya was standing on the line that separated them. Before the night ended, that line would tear wider, and neither of them knew how deep the crack would run. Daniel didn't say another word to Harper. He took Maya's hand gently and led her away from the courtyard, away from the whispers, away from people who didn't understand the weight she carried just to stand in that room. When they reached a quieter hallway lined with soft candlelight, Maya finally stopped walking. Her hand slipped from his. "Daniel," she said softly, "you didn't have to defend me like that." "Yes, I did," he replied. She crossed the line. Maya shook her head. "People like Harper, people from your world, they don't scare me. I've dealt with worse. But I'm worried about you." Daniel frowned. "Why?" She looked at him, eyes steady but filled with something deep and heavy. "Because I see what this is doing to you. You try to protect me and protect yourself at the same time, and it's pulling you in two different directions." He stepped closer. "I'm not being torn. I'm choosing you." Maya's voice lowered, shaky but honest. "That's the part that scares me." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, one of his colleagues appeared in the hallway with two other businessmen beside him. They greeted Daniel with polite nods, but their gaze paused on Maya with the same cold curiosity he had seen throughout the night. "Daniel," one of them said, "a few of us wanted to speak with you about the upcoming merger. Thought this would be a good moment." Daniel straightened, instinctive responsibility taking hold. "Now, at Harper's wedding." "It won't take long," the man said, glancing at Maya again. "I'm sure your friend won't mind." Maya folded her arms gently, understanding far more than anyone realized. "Go," she said. "It's all right." Daniel looked conflicted, but he finally nodded. "I'll be back in a minute." The moment he disappeared around the corner with the group, Maya let out a breath she had been holding all night. She leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of the evening settle deep in her bones. She had come prepared to face judgment, but she hadn't expected it to feel so suffocating. When Daniel returned 10 minutes later, Maya was exactly where he left her, but her expression had changed. Not angry, not sad, just thoughtful, deeply thoughtful. "Sorry," he said, brushing a hand through his hair. "They always do this. I didn't mean." "It's okay," she said. "It's not okay," he insisted. "They treat you like you're invisible, and then act like I owe them my time." Maya stepped closer, her tone soft but firm. "Daniel, what happened tonight? It's not your fault. But it's a reminder. You live in a world full of people who think they're the center of everything. You built your business with them. You built your life around their expectations. And I don't want that life anymore," Daniel said. "Not if it means hurting you." Maya looked down for a moment, then met his eyes. "I'm not hurt by them. I'm hurt by the idea that you're being forced to choose lines you didn't draw." Daniel reached for her hand, but she gently pulled away. "I don't want to talk about this here," she whispered. "Not while everything is so loud." He nodded. "Then let's leave." They slipped out of the villa together, stepping into the quiet night air. As they walked toward the car, the cold breeze felt like a relief after the stifling pressure inside. Daniel opened the passenger door, and Maya settled into her seat without a word. He drove in silence, neither of them knowing where the night would lead. By the time they reached his apartment, the city lights had softened into a calm glow. Daniel unlocked the door, and Maya stepped inside, her steps slow and thoughtful. Everything felt heavier now. He poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "Tell me what's in your mind." Maya took a sip, then set the glass down. "Daniel, tonight showed me something. Something I didn't want to see." "What do you mean?" She turned toward him, her expression clear and honest. "You're trying so hard to make me feel safe in your world. But you're the one paying the price each time. You're the one being questioned. You're the one being judged for choosing me." "I don't care what anyone thinks," Daniel said. Maya shook her head gently. "You don't, but your world does. And they're not going to stop." Daniel tried to stay calm. "Then we ignore them." "It's not that simple. Maya, I'm not letting anyone push you away from me." Her eyes softened with sadness. "I'm not afraid of losing you because of them. I'm afraid you'll lose things you've worked for because of me." Daniel stepped closer, his voice breaking slightly. "You're not a burden. You're the only person who's made me feel like myself in years." Maya closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. "I'm trying to find myself again, too. I'm trying to rebuild. But I can't do that if I'm constantly watching you fight battles because of me. That's not how a partnership should start." He reached out for her hand again, and this time she let him hold it. "I care about you," Daniel said. "More than I expected. More than I know how to explain." "I care about you too," she whispered. "And that's exactly why I need to think clearly." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe before we rush into anything, we need to step back and breathe." Daniel's heart tightened. "You're asking for space." Maya nodded. "Not because I don't want you, but because I want to know who I am before I stand beside someone like you." He felt a pain he wasn't ready for. "How much space?" "I don't know," she said, "but I know I need it. And you need to see what parts of your life still belong to you and what parts you've been carrying because people expect you to." He looked at her for a long moment, feeling something inside him break and rebuild at the same time. "If you need space," he said quietly, "I'll give it to you." Maya's eyes glistened, not with sadness, but with gratitude. "Thank you." She stayed 1 more hour. They talked, not about what was breaking them, but about what made them human. She laughed softly at one of his stories. He listened to her describe dreams she had forgotten she was allowed to hold. And when she finally stood to leave, the weight in the room felt real enough to reach. Daniel walked her to the door. She turned back once more, looking at him the way someone looks at a memory they hope will return someday. "Take care of yourself," she whispered. "You too." And then she stepped into the hallway, walked toward the elevator, and disappeared from sight. When the door closed behind her, Daniel stood in the silent apartment with a feeling he had avoided for years. Loss. But he also felt something else hidden beneath the ache. Hope that this wasn't the end. Not yet. The days after Maya left felt longer than anything Daniel had lived through before. He threw himself into work, pretending the silence in his apartment didn't bother him. But every quiet morning, every empty evening, every untouched cup of coffee on the counter reminded him of the space she once filled. He missed her voice. He missed her calm. He missed the way she looked at him as if nothing in the world could shake her, even when everything in her life already had. Weeks passed, and Maya rebuilt her days piece by piece. She found a small room to rent above a corner store. The paint on the walls was peeling and the water heater hissed sometimes, but it was hers. She cleaned houses in the mornings, washed dishes at a cafe in the afternoons, and helped at a shelter in the evenings. The work was exhausting, but it gave her purpose. It helped her breathe again. And yet, every time she lay down at night, the thoughts returned. Daniel's laugh, Daniel's eyes, Daniel's hand reaching for hers. She tried to tell herself that letting him go was the right choice, that she needed space to stand on her own. But the ache in her chest whispered something else entirely. Daniel wasn't doing much better. He had confronted his family about the way they spoke about Maya. He pushed back against colleagues who whispered behind closed doors. He stopped attending gatherings where he knew she would be mocked without being present. For the first time in years, Daniel began choosing his life instead of the one others had built around him. Still, every victory felt hollow without someone to share it with. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Daniel found himself driving without thinking. He didn't check the map. He didn't question the route. His hands moved on their own. And when he finally stopped the car, he was parked outside the small building where Maya now lived. He stared at the front door in disbelief, the streetlights casting soft shadows across the pavement. He hadn't planned this, but he couldn't leave. He stepped out into the cool night air, his heart pounding harder with every step. Rain began to fall, slow at first, then heavier, turning the street into a blur of silver reflections. Daniel didn't turn back. He walked to the door and knocked quietly. On the other side of the wall, Maya froze. She had just finished setting her clothes out to dry, the faint smell of laundry soap filling the tiny room. When she heard the knock, she assumed it was the store owner downstairs asking about rent. But something in her chest tightened, a nervous flutter she couldn't explain. She opened the door. Daniel stood there, soaked from the rain, his hair clinging to his forehead and his suit jacket dripping onto the doormat. But none of that mattered. The only thing she saw was the expression in his eyes, raw, tired, hopeful. "Maya," he breathed. She couldn't speak. She stepped aside slowly, motioning for him to come inside. He entered without hesitation. The room was small, but warm, lit by a single lamp beside the bed. Daniel looked around, taking in the simplicity of her new life, then looked back at her with something that felt almost like guilt. "I shouldn't have just shown up like this," he said quietly, "but I couldn't stay away anymore." She swallowed hard, her voice soft. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" He ran a hand through his wet hair. "I thought giving you space would help. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could just keep moving and let things settle. But every day without you felt wrong, like I was walking through the world with half of myself missing." Maya felt a tremor move through her chest. "You don't need me to be whole. I don't need you to fix me," Daniel said. "I need you because everything feels real when you're in the room. I'm not pretending with you. I'm not performing. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm just me." She looked at him, searching his face for the pieces she thought she had lost. "And what about your world? The people who can't stand the idea of you choosing someone like me?" Daniel stepped closer. "I stopped living for them. I stopped shaping my life around what they expect. I don't want their world if it means losing someone who made me remember what it feels like to be alive." Maya's eyes shimmered. "Daniel, I've been trying so hard to rebuild my life, to stand on my own. I didn't want to depend on you before I knew how to depend on myself." "You don't have to depend on me," he said. "Just let me stand beside you." She felt her breath shake. "And if everything becomes difficult again, if people keep talking, then let them talk," Daniel said gently. "I'm not asking the world for permission anymore." A long silence settled between them, heavy with everything they had held inside since the night she walked out. Maya finally took a deep breath. "I missed you," she whispered. Daniel's eyes softened. "I missed you every day." She stepped closer until their hands touched. She didn't pull away. Daniel didn't move either, afraid the moment would slip through his fingers. "This isn't going to be perfect," she said. "There will still be judgment. There will still be things we both need to figure out." "I know," Daniel said, "but I'm ready to face all of it, as long as it's with you. And I'm still learning how to trust myself again," she whispered. "Then we'll learn together." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself exhale the fear she had carried for months. When she opened them, something new settled in her gaze. Something steady, something brave. She leaned forward and wrapped her arms around him, drawing him close. Daniel held her as though he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. Rain continued to fall outside, soft and distant, while the warmth of the room wrapped around them. For the first time since their worlds collided, neither of them felt out of place. When they finally stepped back from each other, Maya gave a small smile, filled with a quiet certainty she had not felt in years. "All right," she said softly. "Let's see where this goes." Daniel took her hand, holding it as if it were the beginning of something he wouldn't let go of again. "It's just the beginning," he said. And for the first time, they both believed it. Together, they stepped toward a future that wasn't defined by where they came from, but by the choices they were finally brave enough to make. Whatever waited for them, challenges, doubts, or shadows of the past, they would face it side by side. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for both of them, That was finally enough.